Hey, how's it going? So this is my drill press, and I've got this table on it right now. It's an add-on table, and it's just sitting on here. So you know what? You don't see that. I'm taking that away because I'm going to make my own table. Much better than that one you just saw. So stay tuned. All right, so the heart of my system is going to be what I call a guide plate, and that's what this shape is here. And what I did is I took a template of it and I pasted it onto this hardboard. I'm going to cut that hardboard out so I can use that to cut out, because I'm going to need 4 of these, so this will be my guide. So far I drilled out the 2 ends of the slot here with a drill that's off camera, and I'm now going to continue cutting out the rest of this groove or slot with the scroll saw. Alright, so I've got my template cut out here on this hardboard, and I'm going to just trace it onto this piece of 1/2-inch plywood and make 4 pieces to cut out. Now I'm cutting out those rough blanks that I just made up and getting them closer to the final shape. And to start the grooves that are going to end up on the inside of these parts, I drilled some holes in them. Now I'm attaching that template I made earlier out of hardboard using double-sided tape. And then I'm using the router table to cut out the shape of the parts themselves using the template as a guide. And now I'm using my very handy Jimmy DeRosta ice pick to separate the template from my parts. And now I'm cutting out some thin plywood to make some of the other parts of this assembly. Alright, so we got our pieces here that we're going to glue up. You saw these before, but since I showed them to you, I put this notch in here, and you'll see how that goes in there. And then I've got these pieces, so let's get started. So I got some glue ready, and I just spread it all over all these pieces and glued them all at once, because I needed them all to fit together square. And I couldn't let them dry and then come back later and glue some more parts, so I just did it all at once. You can see here that I discovered the assembly was a little bit out of square, so I made some adjustments with the clamps before everything started to dry. And then I checked it one more time to make sure it was square. And then once that assembly was done, I started on the second one. So while those assemblies are drying, I switched over to working on some threaded rod that I'm going to use for this project. So I'm measuring it, and I used a abrasive cutting wheel to cut it to length. So after my glued up assemblies had a chance to dry, I unclamped them and took a good look at them, and they look really good. So we're ready to move on to the next step. Alright, so I tried to get you a couple of good angles. You can look at my drill press here, and you can see how I'm going to put these pieces on. So what I'll do, I'll just kind of show you how it looks for now. So these guys go underneath the table like so, one on each side, like that. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bolt them to each other. So I'm going to put that, I'm going to get that stud that I cut earlier, and I'm going to pass it through both of these holes here. So you can see that. I don't know if you can see that, but okay. So then this guy comes underneath here, and it straddles this arm here that holds the table. So you see how it goes above and below this arm here. And I'm going to just kind of hold it in place for a second, and then bring the other half over here and guide that in here. A little tricky, probably nice to have another person here right now, but I'm going to put the nut on the other side here. Alright. So now you can see the idea right now that I've got it on here. So this is now like a frame, and we're going to have the table is going to ride in this. It's going to have pivots that ride through this track here, both sides, and then I'll be able to remove it, put it in position, and remove it whenever I want to. Okay, before I move on, I just want to show you how. Make sure you see how this thing is sitting in here, and how the arm is straddled. This stud here is sitting above that part of the arm, and then this stud is sitting below the arm. And so together they keep this thing from rocking either up or down. Okay, now it's on to cutting the rough pieces for the table itself. I'm using 3/4 inch plywood for that. Alright, I've got those two pieces I just cut on the table saw clamped together, and they're sitting here on the drill press, and I'm going to drill a hole through in between them so that it's a half on each side. So let's do it. All right. See how we did here. Yeah, it's good. And now I've got each half of the table that I just showed you is going to get a groove in it, and that is going to eventually become a T-slot for holding screws. And now I'm just taking that same half and I'm rounding off the bottom edge of that piece. And here I'm drilling some holes in it, and you'll see a little while where that hole, what that hole is for. And then I'm also putting a counterbore hole in the back side of the table. You'll also see what that does in a little while. And now I've got that piece at the bandsaw, and I'm doing some shaping on it. Okay, we're back here at the bench, and I've got these two halves of the table that we're going to make, and I've got them flipped over on their back side, and I've also got these little pieces that I made off camera. They're little pivot pieces, and what we're going to do is glue them on to the underside of the table like this, and I've got these spacers that I made so that I can make sure these pivot pieces are the right spacing, and go ahead and glue them down. I thought this would be a good time to make sure this dowel rod that I plan to put in here later is going to fit okay, so I did a test fit on it. Alright, so we'll let that dry and pick it up from there. And here I'm taking some thin plywood pieces and I'm boring a hole in between the two of them, just like I did with those thick pieces earlier. Alright, let's take these clamps off of here. Okay, these are nice and solid. But I'm still going to put some screws in here to hold them a little bit better. And now I'm laying out the shape of the table pieces onto the thin plywood so that I can cut them out to match. Alright, so I've applied double-sided tape on the surface of these pieces of the table, and then I'm going to take these rough cut pieces and attach them on here. That's pretty good. Put it down. Press it down real good. Okay. Do the same thing over here. Okay, press that down. And now I'm just cleaning them up on the router table with a trimming bit. And now I've got that piece upside down on the table saw, cutting a slot and creating a T-slot. And you can see how that screw head now slides through there. Alright, so we've got these halves ready that are all built up and everything. So now we're going to do a little test fit. And so set these down here for a second. Get them all lined up. I've got some matching grain on here somehow. And alright, and then I've got these dowels here ready. And what I'm going to do, thread these through. Set these down. Thread these through here. So, nice snug fit. And this one here, also snug fit. Oops, that's, there we go. And that. All right, there we go. And now, that's how it is in the up position, and then I can slide these down, and then they go down and underneath the table, like so. So one thing I want to do, so you can see I've already planned, I've got these holes here, and what I'm going to do is put some magnets in these holes, and then I'm going to have a little plate underneath here that just kind of lines up with that, and it'll grab on there, and it'll keep those two tables from hanging down like that. So I've got the parts of the assembly back at the bench, and I've got these little metal pieces, some magnets, and I'm going to use some epoxy to attach those. So next thing I did is I took two pieces of plywood and I joined them together. These are going to become the fence for this table. It took a couple of tries to get those pieces to line up with each other, but I got it eventually. So after that dried, I brought it over to the router table and I cut a groove in it. And that groove is going to receive a piece of T-track. You're going to see it here in a minute. Now I'm attaching that piece of T-track with some screws. And then I'm attaching a stop block to the T-track. Alright, so I want to give you one last tour of this thing after I did a little bit of fine tuning on it. So you can see now I've got it installed. I've got the magnets holding the bottom, holding the halves of the table on the bottom side of the frame. And you see how it's nice and kind of staying in place. And then when I want to put it in, put it on top, I just slide it over and there you go. Good to go. There you go. And then the fence just goes here. And I've got these screws that slide in here. And this lines up here pretty good. Like so. I don't know if you can see, I had to do a little bit of massaging of those holes to make everything line up. Just put those clamp knobs on there. And this adjusts any position I want on here, like so. When I have it where I want, I just tighten it down. And then the stop block, adjust that anywhere I want. There you go. A little off center, but you can adjust that pretty easily. And then when I'm done using it, I just undo the fence. Actually, just slide it right out, like so. And then just bring this down underneath, and there you go, back to the metal table. The fence, I just, if I undo these screws, and then I can just pass these screws through the bottom, like so. Like so, and then I use these nuts to hold it in place. There you go. All out of the way, and I can work on my metal table, no problem. All right, guess what? This project is done. This retractable, self-storing drill press table project is finished. So let me know what you think. Is this a practical solution or just a flash in the pan idea? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.